Good afternoon. We're talking the finance sector here, and as people make their way in, I'm going to keep things going and keep things moving. I hope you had a great lunch, and hope you've been having a great conference so far. What a time it's been, huh? Okay, our first session this afternoon, we're going to take a look at the world of finance. Thanks to solutions that impact operations, risk management, and fraud detection, to name a few, AI is making a massive impact on the sector. And so let's bring up our panel. We're going to do this the same way we've done before. We have a business leader who's going to present their interest, what they know. Then we're going to have a panel conversation. And then we have a researcher who's going to talk a little bit about the research they've been doing, along with a startup who gets to pitch to you. Okay. Let's bring them up. Our business leader for this presentation from CDPQ, please welcome Jean-François Bérubé. Come on up, Jean-François. Joining Jean-François will be the panel from FreshBooks. Mara Raif, come on up. Mara, come on up here. Good work on the clapping. Really appreciate it. The CTO of Flybits, Peter Kramaric. Come on up, Peter. The Senior Vice President Products and Platforms from MasterCard Canada is Daryl McMullen. Come on out, Daryl. From Wealthsimple, their CTO is Diederik Van Leer. And our startup we're going to hear from is Theory and Practice, and that is Rogoya Tabrizi. Come on up here, Rogoya. Our researcher from Schema is Rene Garcia. And of course, our moderator from Montreal, the Montreal Bureau Chief for Bloomberg, is Mathieu Dion. Merci, Mathieu. Take it away. The floor is yours.
Bonjour à tous. For the next few minutes, we're going to have this discussion in French, but I think you have some translators that can help. That's my understanding. Je suis heureux de représenter Bloomberg. Je suis correspondant au Québec pour Bloomberg News. Je suis le Montreal Bureau Chief pour eux. Et je suis heureux de représenter la compagnie pour parler de ce volet important de l'intelligence artificielle qui est celui de la finance. Vous savez, en finance, et on va en parler dans un instant avec Jean-François Bérubé, mais ça existe depuis quand même un bon moment déjà, l'intelligence artificielle. Vous ne savez peut-être pas, mais même chez Bloomberg, par exemple, on a beaucoup de clients. On est une plateforme d'information financière et on va scraper les sites web d'entreprises publiques. Et lorsqu'un communiqué est émis, on va avoir Bloomberg Automation qui va produire un court article pour informer les marchés financiers, et ça en quelques millisecondes. C'est le genre de choses qu'on peut faire, mais il y a beaucoup plus. Et justement, pour en parler, Jean-François Bérubé, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Vous êtes responsable des stratégies quantitatives et de la science des données à la Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec. La Caisse qui est le deuxième plus grand fonds de pension au Canada avec 400 milliards d'actifs sous gestion. Et je suis la Caisse presque au quotidien. Mais j'ai appris quelque chose quand j'ai su que vous existiez. Mais la question que j'ai pour vous, c'est êtes-vous dans le fond d'un sous-sol avec des serveurs dans un laboratoire ou encore vous faites partie prenante des stratégies d'investissement?
Non, on n'est pas dans un sous-sol, on n'est pas dans une salle isolée avec des tables de ping-pong, des machines à slush, puis on n'a pas des sarraux blancs. Là.
Pas de glissade.
Non, on est au milieu de l'action. On est positionné, en fait, en investissement directement.
Est-ce que ça fait longtemps à la Caisse que l'intelligence artificielle existe?
Ça fait, je dirais, depuis au moins 5-6 ans qu'on s'y intéresse vraiment très sérieusement. En 2018, on a mis en place un partenariat avec le MILA. En 2019, on a bâti une équipe dédiée à la science des données, dont l'intelligence artificielle. Ça s'est accéléré plus récemment. En 2021, on a regroupé ensemble plusieurs équipes pour se doter d'une force de frappe importante, une centaine de professionnels, une équipe multidisciplinaire, finance, économie, bien sûr, mais aussi sciences des données, intelligence artificielle, informatique, physique, mathématiques. Tout ça avec un mandat à la fois de développer et de gérer des stratégies d'investissement appuyées par les données, par l'intelligence artificielle, et également d'appuyer par, encore une fois, la science des données, l'ensemble des investisseurs dans toutes les catégories d'actifs couvertes par la Caisse, infrastructure, placement privé, revenus fixes et marché boursier.
Mais autrement dit, ce qu'il va y avoir, par exemple, des transactions qui vont être réalisées avec l'intelligence artificielle à la Caisse, je ne sais pas, que ce soit sur des positions longues, des positions courtes, faire du hedging. De quelle façon, concrètement, c'est utilisé?
On utilise l'intelligence artificielle pour augmenter les capacités de nos professionnels en investissement. Okay? Donc, l'intelligence artificielle, on le voit vraiment comme un outil fantastique, en fait, qui nous permet de transformer nos données en source de valeur ajoutée pour nos clients, de 3 façons. Aide à la prise de décision, stratégie d'investissement, gain de productivité. Aide à la prise de décision, je peux te donner un exemple. En marché boursier, on utilise du tree boosting pour identifier les titres les plus susceptibles de surperformer ou de sous-performer le marché. C'est super utile pour nos gestionnaires de portefeuille. Ça agrège énormément d'informations dans un format très simple à utiliser, c'est-à-dire un classement de titres.
OK.
Stratégie d'investissement, l'idée, c'est d'exploiter des grandes quantités de données, d'utiliser l'intelligence artificielle pour optimiser la manière dont les différentes variables qu'on va regarder pour prédire les rendements futurs des titres sont combinées entre elles. Puis productivité, bien là, je fais référence aux dernières avancées en IA générative là, qui ouvrent tout un nouveau pan de cas d'utilisation de l'IA dans une organisation comme la nôtre.
Si on élargit le sujet à la finance en général, la présence de l'IA dans la finance en général, est-ce qu'on voit le jour où on va avoir une approche, là vous l'avez dit, c'est de l'aide à la décision, mais une approche non interventionniste dans la gestion d'actifs, un hands-off approach? Est-ce qu'on pourrait voir ça très bientôt?
C'est dur de se poser. Bon, d'abord, quand on fait de l'IA en investissement ou n'importe où ailleurs, je ne pense pas qu'on soit non interventionniste. Faire de l'IA, là, à quelque part, il faut que tu choisisses ton modèle, il faut que tu choisisses tes intrants, il faut que tu paramétrises ton modèle. Il y a plein d'éléments. Tu n'es pas non interventionniste. Ensuite, en investissement, bien, ça prend quelqu'un qui est imputable des décisions qui sont prises. Ça prend quelqu'un qui est imputable des rendements. Donc, à ta question, la réponse est je ne crois pas. Ceci dit, je peux très bien imaginer, et c'est déjà le cas, que des gestionnaires de portefeuille s'appuient fortement sur l'intelligence artificielle pour faire leur travail, mais ça va toujours être un gestionnaire de portefeuille qui, ultimement, va être imputable de ce qui se passe.
Il ne pourra pas y avoir éventuellement une machine qui pourrait, en quelque sorte, prendre les décisions à la place d'un gestionnaire d'actifs et même être plus compétent et être plus performant pour réaliser les transactions puis battre le marché.
Ouais, est-ce que, tu sais, ta question, ça revient un peu à est-ce que la machine va être meilleure ou est meilleure que l'humain
Parce qu'on se pose la
là-dedans?
question,
Là?
nous aussi.
Tu sais, des gestionnaires de portefeuille, il y en a des bons, il y en a des moins bons. Il y en a qui utilisent l'IA, il y en a qui ne l'utilisent pas là-dedans. Je pense que, tu sais, si l'intelligence artificielle permet d'accroître la capacité des gestionnaires à prendre des décisions mieux informées, là, oui, l'utiliser, c'est certainement un avantage comparatif. Tu sais, notre métier en investissement, c'est de prendre des décisions. Pour faire ça, on analyse de l'information. L'intelligence artificielle, ça nous permet d'analyser beaucoup d'informations, ça nous permet de découvrir des relations dans les données, parfois originales. Ça permet de faire tout ça rapidement. Donc, en ce sens-là, je le vois vraiment comme une capacité qui augmente celle de nos professionnels, mais je ne le vois pas remplacer.
Comme une
Tu sais, à la
menace.
fin, là, les actifs qui sont transigés, ces marchés, ils appartiennent à quelqu'un. Tes participants, c'est des humains.
Bon, c'est intéressant ce que vous dites parce que c'est de l'argent des gens.
Ouais.
Quelle est votre préoccupation avec l'IA en finance à l'heure actuelle? Êtes-vous inquiet par rapport à quelque chose? Qu'est-ce qui vous préoccupe?
Bien, pas tant une préoccupation, plus, je dirais, un défi dans l'intégration de l'intelligence artificielle en gestion d'actifs, c'est la transparence des modèles. La transparence, c'est très important. Il est fondamental pour le gestionnaire de portefeuille de comprendre comment les décisions sont prises, quelles sont les raisons qui poussent un système à recommander telle ou telle chose. Puis après ça, vis-à-vis du client, bien, il faut que le gestionnaire soit en mesure d'expliquer d'où viennent ces rendements, d'expliquer comment les décisions ont été prises. Tu ne peux pas te retrouver devant un comité d'investissement puis dire « Ah, ben, on a perdu un peu d'argent ce trimestre-ci, mais c'est de la faute du modèle d'IA, je ne sais pas trop ce qu'il a fait.
Ouais. »
Ça passe pas. Là.
C'est à qui la faute? La faute repose
Toujours sur le
sur le dos
gestionnaire.
de la caisse, sinon de l'IA. Et c'est aussi l'idée de ne jamais perdre de vue l'intérêt du client aussi. Parce que quand on est gestionnaire de portefeuille, c'est l'intérêt du client qui compte d'abord et avant tout.
Exactement. Et c'est le travail
Pas
du
le perdre.
gestionnaire de portefeuille de prendre en compte les intérêts de son client.
Au Canada, comment on se compare en termes d'utilisation de l'intelligence artificielle en finance par rapport à d'autres places dans le monde, comme les États-Unis, l'Europe? Est-ce qu'on est dans le game? Est-ce qu'on est à l'avant-garde? Où est-ce qu'on est?
Ouais, au Canada, à Montréal en particulier, on a la chance d'avoir un écosystème de l'intelligence artificielle qui est très développé. On a accès à des chercheurs de renommée mondiale, on a accès à des étudiants qui ont été formés par ces gens-là. On a aussi une industrie financière très dynamique. Ce qui nous reste peut-être à faire, c'est le pont entre les deux. Tu sais, c'est ça qui est un petit peu plus difficile. Ça commence à se faire. On est en mode expérimentation, on essaye des choses. L'approche est un petit peu différente de celle qu'on voit peut-être dans d'autres juridictions où l'intégration de l'IA est présente depuis peut-être un peu plus longtemps qu'ici.
OK.
Mais le potentiel d'être dans la course, pour moi, est tout à fait là ici.
C'est quoi, selon vous, la prochaine étape? Là, vous avez décrit ce que vous faites, où on en est. What's next? En IA et en finance, dans la gestion d'actifs.
C'est sûr que là, ce qui attire l'attention de tout le monde, là, c'est les récents développements en IA générative. Les gains de production. En fait, en IA générative, ce qui est très intéressant, c'est que ça ouvre la porte à des cas d'utilisation qui n'étaient pas possibles il y a à peine un an. Là. Des problèmes d'affaires pour lesquels il n'existait pas de solution évidente ou accessible. Parce que les techniques de NLP étaient soit pas suffisamment performantes, soit parce qu'elles étaient difficiles à mettre en place. Maintenant, avec l'IA générative, il y a plein de nouveaux cas d'utilisation qui s'ouvrent à nous. Je peux te donner un exemple, si tu veux, là, qu'on est en train de développer chez nous à la Caisse. Notre équipe de recherche en marché boursier rédige 300 notes trimestrielles pour résumer, pour émettre une opinion sur les appels qui suivent la publication des résultats des entreprises. On est en train de travailler avec eux pour bâtir un outil qui leur permet de poser des questions à propos de la transcription de ces appels-là. Tu poses la question en français, tu reçois une réponse en français, et ça t'aide à être beaucoup plus performant, être beaucoup plus efficace dans ton travail de rédaction de ta note.
Un bas de laine GPT.
Non, pas un bas de laine GPT. Non, pas si loin que ça. Mais tu peux imaginer d'aller un petit peu plus loin que ce que je viens de te dire. Après ça, tu peux te dire, OK, le robot, là, s'il était capable d'écrire la note au complet. On a commencé à l'essayer. Ça donne des résultats beaucoup moins bons que quand un de nos analystes le fait, parce que sa base de connaissances est beaucoup plus limitée. Il voit la transcription, il voit quelques documents pertinents sur la compagnie, mais il n'a pas accès à toute la base de connaissances qu'un analyste s'est formé au cours de sa carrière. Mais malgré tout, ce robot-là, qui nous amène de l'information pertinente, va nous permettre d'étendre la couverture qu'on est capable d'avoir. Tu sais, si notre équipe d'analystes est capable de couvrir 300 entreprises aujourd'hui, on va passer à quelques milliers d'entreprises plus tard. Donc, ça demeure très pertinent, même si le niveau de qualité est moindre. Là.
OK. Juste te ramener sur le marché de façon globale. Est-ce que l'IA assure plus ou moins de volatilité sur les marchés?
À la volatilité. Là, ça revient à la question de ça vient d'où la volatilité.
Je te ramène tout le temps là, mais...
Bien, ça vient d'où la volatilité? Ouais. Ça vient d'où la volatilité, ces marchés? Ça vient de l'incertitude. L'incertitude causée par la géopolitique, causée par des changements dans la politique monétaire, l'incertitude causée par des résultats inattendus d'une entreprise, des anticipations de cycle économique. Cette toile de fond-là ne changera pas avec ou sans l'IA. Donc, l'incertitude va rester. L'incertitude crée de la volatilité. Les humains sont émotifs et les humains, à mon avis, vont rester présents. Comme je le disais tantôt, c'est eux qui détiennent les actifs, c'est eux qui sont imputables. Il y aura beau y avoir des machines, les machines vont être influencées par les humains. Donc, je ne pense pas que ça change grand-chose.
Okay. Il y a peut-être des investisseurs du dimanche dans la salle qui veulent peut-être tenter de battre les marchés. Et là, quand l'intelligence artificielle arrive, puis qu'il y a des gros fonds de pension qui ont les moyens de s'outiller de cette façon-là, on va en parler peut-être un peu avec Wealthsimple tantôt, mais est-ce que ça devient plus difficile pour ces petits investisseurs de faire de meilleurs paris, de battre les marchés, d'avoir des meilleurs rendements?
Oui, c'est déjà très difficile pour les investisseurs au détail ou les petits investisseurs. Je lisais récemment dans le Financial Times que 70% des petits investisseurs perdent de l'argent à ces marchés boursiers. Je vais te répondre en deux volets. Là. Il y a l'asymétrie d'information puis il y a les biais comportementaux. L'asymétrie d'information, si l'IA permet aux grands joueurs institutionnels d'avoir une capacité plus grande d'intégrer plus d'informations dans sa prise de décision, ça va leur donner un avantage supplémentaire. Ça va être encore plus difficile pour les petits investisseurs qui n'ont pas accès à ça de tirer leur épingle du jeu. Cela dit, on peut aussi imaginer des cas où l'IA aide à démocratiser l'accès à l'information. Fait que, D'autre part, biais comportementaux. Encore une fois, je disais là-dessus, puis là, je ne sais plus quelle étude était citée par le magazine Forbes, mais il sous-entendait que la raison pour laquelle c'était si difficile pour les petits investisseurs, c'était surtout parce qu'ils ont de la difficulté à établir un plan puis à s'y tenir dans l'exécution de leur stratégie d'investissement. Tu sais, les biais comportementaux, là, c'est quoi? C'est avoir tendance à garder trop longtemps des positions perdantes ou à se défaire trop rapidement de positions gagnantes. Tu sais, on est des humains, on aime ça avoir raison, là. Ici, peut-être que l'IA, on pourrait imaginer que ça puisse éventuellement aider les petits investisseurs à établir justement un plan et à s'y tenir dans l'exécution.
Intéressant. Jean-François Bérubé, merci beaucoup. J'ai beaucoup appris. Et dans un instant, on va apprendre d'autres choses maintenant avec des fintechs. Vous devez nous laisser,
Oui.
mais on poursuit la discussion. Merci beaucoup.
Merci Mathieu.
Vous avez devant vous les représentants de trois entreprises en croissance canadiennes, et une dont vous avez peut-être une carte de crédit dans vos poches. Alors, allons-y dans l'ordre, and from now on, we're going to have this discussion in English. Mara Reef, you are a Chief Data Officer with FreshBooks. FreshBooks provides a cloud-based accounting software for small businesses. Peter Kramaric, you are Chief Technology Officer and co-founder at Flybits. Flybits leverages financial institutions' data to give their clients a more personalized service on their apps. Darrell McMullen, you are a Senior Vice President in Products and Platforms at MasterCard Canada. You are in the business of credit cards, I think. And Diedrich Van Leer, you are Chief Technology Officer at Wealthsimple, a well-known online investment platform. So my first question is pretty easy and pretty quick. On a scale of 1 to 10, to which extent does AI play a central role on your platforms, and where was that figure 5 to 10 years ago, Mara?
So I think when I think about FreshBooks in our platforms, I think I give us a 2 or 3. We probably were a 0 before, but we're really spending time not only looking at how data and AI can help our platform, but also our services that support our customers, whether that be customer service, fraud management, and so other business operations components.
Yeah, I think from a Flybits perspective, 5 or 10 years ago, we were probably pretty low, as a lot of companies are, especially working with different financial institutions. But as their knowledge has built up, as they have more and more data, that became a very important theme for us over the last couple of years. So definitely high on our list at the moment, and happy to work with all of those financial institutions.
So 8 on 10.
Sorry?
8 on 10, maybe?
8. Let's say 8.5. Let's be fancy.
Darrell?
Yeah, it's great to be here, by the way. When it comes to AI, AI has always been a part of MasterCard network at some level, partially out of necessity early on with the proliferation of electronic payments and the automation of many things. At the scale that you're at, being able to have AI was critical very early on within MasterCard. We built out a number of different intelligence centers around that. We've invested in over 100 AI companies. We've acquired about 35, 36 of them, because you simply can't build the DNA just within your own company that quickly. We don't treat it as a product, though, even though we do have AI products that we offer to other customers. We treat it more as a fabric or electricity layer that we infiltrate into a number of our different capabilities.
Diedrich?
At Wealthsimple, we like to keep things simple. And so we've been using machine learning in our fraud, credit underwriting, and back-office optimization. So I would say we've been probably a solid 7. But right now, with large language models and ChatGPT entering, we're super, super excited to push it up and get to a 9.
Whether it's for small businesses, banks, retail customers, what do you think is the common ground here, the common point between your platforms when it comes to AI? What does it what does it bring to in the finance sector? I don't know if one of you want to answer that.
Sorry. You want me to answer that?
You can go.
Sure. So from I think if you were to say what business are we in, you mentioned credit cards. Credit cards is one portion of our business, but we power 13 of the 20 largest economies. Pretty much every transaction that happens in those countries, we're facilitating at some level or another. So I would say we're in the trust business more than anything else. So when it comes to AI and how we're using it, it is how are we enabling from a fraud mechanism, whether it be device management, identity management, transaction management, account management, across those different vectors, what role AI is playing in automating those. It is important, though, that we still treat AI as a guide, not as a god. It's very, very important to establish the difference between those two. It's continuing to ever evolve. As a data set, when it comes to AI, most companies' challenges is how much data they have in order to optimize that. The one generous resource that MasterCard has, almost more than anyone, is data. From just a financial transaction standpoint, probably about 125 billion transactions annually. Around that are probably 40 to 60 other data points. So you get up to a pretty rich data set that happens on a daily basis. So from a fraud mechanism standpoint, that's super important. But I think the other end of that spectrum as well is around hyper-personalization and loyalty and engagement. And how do you optimize the experience for financial institutions, for consumers, for merchants, and even for governments?
And personalization is probably the thing that is a common point between all of you, I guess, because you're able to give a more personal service to your clients, whether it's with banks or retail customers or small businesses. We do talk a lot about AI, but the big question is, do we talk enough about data, the quality of the data? Who owns that data? And is it different in the finance sector than elsewhere, you think? Maybe, Peter, since you're working with many institutions.
Yeah, I think AI is everywhere, obviously. It's in our homes, it's in our workplaces, it's in the media, everywhere. But in order for companies to have a strong AI strategy, it really depends on a comprehensive data strategy. AI without data is meaningless. I know that's an easy thing to say and it's kind of obvious, but it's really important when you build out your AI strategy that data strategy plays a strong component of it, especially in the finance space where regulation is everywhere. Different jurisdictions, different regions have different regulations. With the advent of open banking, the end consumer is controlling and owning more of their own data. So it really plays a strong role to have a comprehensive data strategy. And that's something that we at Flybits work very closely with our customers, is understanding that, sure, data can be located in one area, but really more and more data is becoming dispersed. You have customers that own their data that might live somewhere. You have banking data that might live somewhere in 20, 30, 40 databases. You may have third-party data that exists somewhere else. So how do we bring this data, not necessarily located in the same area, but how do we bring it in to train our models across systems? And I think that's a really fascinating and interesting topic that Flybits is trying to tackle. One of the scale AI projects that we're actually part of showcases that by bringing in data from a telecommunication operator, from a utility, from a financial institution, bring that data together to try to understand holistically the user journey of an end consumer. So using your utility bills to affect your telecom transaction or your financial transaction, all of that is playing a strong role in Flybits is doing. Now, on the data side, then everybody's going to say, why am I going to give my utility company access to my telecom access? So it's important for the businesses to then say, okay, well, if you're going to give us something, we got to give you something back in response. So your data is valuable, your data is currency. What can I offer you for you to give me that data from an offerings perspective, from a services perspective, from a product perspective? And I think that's something that we at Flybits work with our customers to really try to help them along with that process.
Anyone want to add something on the top of that? Diederik?
Yeah, I fully agree with Peter. I don't think you will ever regret investing in your data architecture and your data platform. Nothing erodes confidence and trust more than low quality data, right? And so, well, Simple is actively working with some open source communities like Open Lineage to come up with a better way to annotate data so we can track what it is, where it's going. And I think it's not the most topic that people like to talk about. It's hard to make the case. It's hard to quantify the ROI, but without it, you're just building on quicksand. And you really have to realize that. So please invest in your data architecture and data platform.
By providing financial platforms with AI and making things easier for clients, customers, small businesses, and that's a question for you, Mara. Like at some point, can customers become a little bit too lazy and forgetting the basic knowledge of accounting, and because you're all doing it for them, right? I don't know what you're.
I mean, yeah. So, I mean, at FreshBooks, our goal actually is to make it so that our small business owners can focus on doing what they do and not have to worry about the accounting. Usually, they have a bookkeeper or an accountant that's supporting them. But fundamentally, when we think about how we're implementing AI in our data strategy, it's really actually all about taking away friction from our customers. So it's taking away the friction, the mundane routine activities that they would normally do, and then presenting them with recommendations around the real, the part that we still want human perspective and human thinking on. So we don't do anything at this point in the background for our customers. It's all done with a as in the form of a recommendation. So if we think about, we help our customers categorize their expenses. It's a really boring thing that small business owners do not want to have to do. And so if we can make recommendations, it's much easier for them to approve those recommendations. But we're not really yet in a space, I don't think, that we're going to just start to make all the things happen in the background. Even on the customer support side, it's how do we get people the answers that they want more quickly so they don't have to speak to a human. There's some earlier conversations around fraud. How do we keep fraudsters out of our platform? How do we keep our customers safe? So we're really thinking about it in the perspective of how do we take away the mundane to really allow our small business owners to do their craft and to do what they love to do, as opposed to this idea of, running their business for them. I don't think that's anywhere we want to be anytime soon at this point.
Thank you. Diedrich, I want to touch something that we talked a little bit about it with the CDPQ, but at Wealthsimple, like it's an online investment platform. Will there be a moment where you are going to use large language models to make some transactions for your customers? Or where are you at on this? Is it happening?
I think that's still a few steps away, but we are definitely thinking about that. And as a matter of fact, we had a very small hackathon project where we actually were able to, using LangChain, follow a Twitter account and buy the stock being recommended on that particular Twitter account. But this is very much a hackathon insight for ourselves to understand and learn the technology. Automated trading is probably a little bit far out, but we are very excited about the idea of giving people a booster pack, an LLM as a booster pack to make them able to process all this data faster. Like there's an insane information overload, particularly in the financial markets. And so you can imagine having a LLM trained against financial data to help find you trends and inspire you to find your own trading strategies to pursue that alpha. So I think that would be probably those two things would be probably the first stepping stones. And then maybe one day we'll get all the way to automated trading, but we will have to really be careful about governance, making sure it's doing the right thing when people understand why it's doing the thing. So that seems to be still a bit far out, but I'm very excited about the journey to get there.
What are your best use cases for now at Wealthsimple when using AI?
So the best use cases right now are really this idea of a booster pack and equipping all our employees. So we have equipped all our engineers with GitHub Copilot. We are working together with Ada on a chatbot. We're actively looking in ways to make all of our employees more productive. And whether it's by summarizing all the information that flows through a company, or annotating CS tickets, or sentiment analysis, there's a whole range of questions that are very hard to answer before LLMs. And right now, you just feed them in, and you get really high-quality answers back. And so we're really pushing here and very excited about what's possible.
Daryl, you did talk about protecting the customer's data, and that's your main goal with AI right now. But you have so much information on people. I mean, like, you must look at my credit card bill and say, what this guy is doing, but you can't understand what I'm doing. You cannot understand my behavior, right? So in your case, what's the limit where you can use AI to use customer data?
I mean, I think some of the feedback that we've gotten from a number of financial institutions, credit card fraud has actually become one of their least fraud vectors. It's actually moved and shifted more to synthetic IDs, account openings, account takeovers, imposter scams, all of those type of scenarios. So we've deployed a number of AI capabilities that have nothing to do with our credit card network at all. One of our products is actually one of the Canadian companies we acquired, NewDetect. It's able to monitor every interaction you have through any user journey. It knows whether that person normally holds their phone in the right hand or their left hand, whether they hold it at a 30-degree angle, whether they type with one thumb or two thumbs, what's their typing speed, what's their typical user journey. All of those things are data points that are setting off flags or providing security around different transactions. From a governance standpoint, so why that's super important as well is we have to have and operate obviously at an ethical level and have guiding principles around that. So the way we look at data is your data is you own it, you control it, you should benefit from the use of it, whether it be from a security protection standpoint or decision intelligence standpoint, and we secure it, and whether that's on behalf of merchants or governments or consumers.
Are you guys concerned about, we've been talking a lot about ChatGPT in the last year, but since you're managing people's money pretty much, are you concerned about how fast AI is being adopted right now in the finance sector? For the finance sector, I should say.
You want,
can go.
I'm not worried about the speed of adoption of AI necessarily. And here in Canada, actually, we benefit from a MasterCard perspective. We have our global center of cybersecurity headquartered here in Canada. So we've got some of the best AI engineers globally working out of the country here, so we're able to monitor a lot of those transactions. I think probably where I'm more worried or where MasterCard is preparing for is quantum computing and how the correlation between quantum computing and AI are. Because if you look at what a step function change in computing power that is, pretty much most cryptographic keys that protect the cards on your phone today or any device can be broken from quantum computing, right? So that's a disaster scenario that I'm painting, but so if I would say where are we investing the most amount of our time and resources right now, it's getting ahead of quantum computing and what impact that will have related to AI.
Peter, are you concerned about how AI is adopted right now?
Well, I guess personally, I think it's a natural evolution of where everything is going. I think we see it a lot in the news about wanting to put regulations and being careful about how the data is used. And to me, it always goes back to the ownership of the data and what you can do with that data so that you can either expose your data for some services or you don't expose your data and you won't get the enrichment of the service that you otherwise would. So for sure, there has to be things in place, but to me, it's a natural progression that we're making. And maybe sometimes from a financial perspective, from a personalization perspective, it's got a little bit of a ways to catch up, but definitely from the fraud perspective and from the risk management perspective, there's no other way to go in my mind.
Mara, maybe on this?
Yeah, I think I have a lot of similar feelings. I think for me, there's a couple pieces, right? So really when we think about our customer base, it's how do we help them be better? And I think from that angle, there's a lot of really exciting things on the horizon. I think that can help these really small businesses. It's becoming much more accessible. On the flip side, the other thing that I think we're all spending a lot of time talking about up here is when you're in the financial sector, we're strong targets for fraud, right? So how do people hack into accounts so that they can send invoices and receive payments? That's a big challenge. That's something that we deal with. And so when I think about AI and how we'll be able to adopt it to protect our customers, it's really exciting for me. So yes, I think there's a lot of there's the idea that you can talk about sort of am I concerned, but I actually think there's a lot of really good things coming from it and our ability to protect our customers in ways that smaller companies couldn't before. And I think now there's more to access there. And it's just all about using it responsibly.
Diedrich, maybe?
I'm not concerned at this point in time about AI, because it's just a new technology. What is important, though, is that we think about the implications of using it, that we take our responsibilities very seriously. Going back to what we spoke about data, we know that algorithms will make decisions, will open doors and close doors. So we need to make sure that that happens fair, equitable, it happens transparently. So we cannot abdicate our responsibility in deploying this technology wisely. But that's, I think, always our responsibility with any new technology, and AI is in that sense not different.
We did talk about it with Jean-François, but AI can help your client, but if things go wrong, if AI fails, who's at fault here? Is it the provider of the AI platform? Is it you? Who's at fault, you think?
So at the end of the day, I mean, what we're talking a lot about here is decision intelligence, right? Nothing's perfect. Is it better and more optimal than what the experience is today? Sure. Liability on decisions, and it's kind of what I touched on a little bit before as well, as should be treated as a guide, not as a god. And that's very, very important to kind of distinguish it can help in many ways. It helps optimize decisions in a lot of ways, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is perfect. And that's maybe in the infancy stage that we're at, but every AI algorithm is continually being tweaked and optimized on a daily. And whether that be, I think a few elements, we've talked a lot about fraud here today. Fraud continues to evolve, right? It is to think that a point in time that you'll get it perfect, that will never be the case because it continues to evolve. But it's not just the negative side of it as well. Like another company that we have is called Dynamic Yield, which is a AI-powered, hyper-personalized messaging capability. So whether it's companies like Sephora delivers a different message and a different product and different offering to every single one of their customers in every social channel, they're making new ads every 300 milliseconds on the decisioning of ads. When you're going through a McDonald's drive-through now, they know based the driver's license on the plate and the phone that's in your pocket, what's going to show up on that screen, right? So they're not going to get it perfect and they're not going to get it right. Some of those things are probably less risky than others because they're experimental. Generally, though, on things like that, on media decisions, I think people can agree, like, ads are getting better. They're getting more targeted. They're actually almost becoming more like relevant information than feeling like ads that are irrelevant to me. So there's goodness to this too, right?
Peter, you provide a platform to many institutions. I think TD Bank is one of your clients, right? So if something goes wrong, is it your platform? Is it TD Bank? How does it work? It's people's money, so again.
I understand. I guess understanding the concept of what wrong means is an interesting thought process to go through. But as the folks up here have kind of mentioned, I think it's important to guide the person along that process. You're not necessarily making the decisions for them, at least not yet. We might get to that stage at some point, but right now where we are, I think if something goes wrong, probably there's blame all around that needs to be looked at. But I do think that guiding the person to that process is important. Starting with something that may not be as risky is important. Showing that there's confidence in that through any kind of measures that you can. And then building on top of that is important. But I think the responsibility will fall on everybody, even though everybody will say, no, it's that person's fault, no, it's that person's fault. But I'd like to think that the concept of wrong is just, we shouldn't look at it that way. We should just look at how we can improve things. And if we don't improve things, let's go back to the drawing board.
The Canada industry minister was on stage yesterday announcing a code of conduct. I want to ask you to comment on the code of conduct, but do we need a legal framework in Canada? But something that will address in this legal framework the finance sector precisely.
Yeah.
And what should it include?
So at minimum, from a transparency level, if data is being collected for your benefit, it should be clear what information is being collected and for what intended purpose. How that's displayed through a UX and an understanding or interaction, those are the baseline elements. there are some other things that AI is doing on the fraud level that are behind the scenes on purpose, because you obviously are trying to find the bad guys versus inform the bad guys. So it obviously, when you're coming with fraud type AI, it's managing it in an ethical way, and of course not honeypotting any data either.
Someone want to add something on the top of that? What should a legal framework in Canada include for the finance sector?
Yeah, I think from a legal perspective, it's going to be interesting over the next couple of years. But to your point, I think it's important to show the reasoning behind everything that's happening. And if somebody wants to know more information about it, it should be as transparent as possible, at least when it pertains to their data that's being used. Now, obviously, you're going to build models with everyone's data, and you might not need to know every single little specific detail, but anything that pertains to you, even if it's just a simple ad that's being shown up or something on a McDonald's drive-through that's shown up, you should know why is that being shown up. Now, it'll be interesting how you expose that data as a financial institution, because I think it's an easy thing to say, yeah, you should just get all the data. If you ask for it, I'll give it to you. But there's actually a lot more complications under the hood to be able to feed that data back into the customers that are using it.
Great. Anyone want? No? Well, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for your time, for your comments. Really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now I'm going to leave the stage to Rogaya Tabrizi. She's co-founder and CEO at Tyrann Practice. She'll give us an elevator speech.
Great, thank you so much. All right, let's see if this works. Okay, let's go back. Already. Hello, everybody. It's wonderful to be here and just, listen to everything that everybody talked about. My name is Rogaya Tabrizi. I'll tell you a little bit about myself and tell you a bit about the company and what we are up to. I am a particle physicist by training. I used to work at CERN. My research was on the Atlas detector in Geneva. And then I switched to economics, and I turned game theorist. So I usually joke with people, I tell people that I'm a weird behavioral economist, because I can go to 20 terabytes of data. And the company was very much built at that intersection, combining AI with behavioral economics in order to truly understand what are the main drivers behind behavior. Here we're talking about multiple different examples of how AI can actually impact customers, consumers, and actually also internal stakeholders inside organizations. But do we really understand what are the motivators, what are the drivers, what are the most important things that is actually going to impact that? I'm very lucky, built the company, started the company about 5.5 years ago, been working with some of the biggest brands in the world, and when I get to the last slide, you'll see how privileged I am to work with an incredible team of data scientists and engineers. But I thought to give you guys an example. So here it is, you see a couple of numbers here. Economists, I'm actually really lucky to sit beside another economist. We are probably the only economist in this whole conference. But joke of that aside, it's really important to actually backward engineer from the decisions and from the impact of the decisions that we are going to have. I'll pick an example here from a work that we did with a financial institution in Canada. The question that they had was very much around engaging members. Over years, they were seeing that a lot of their members and their customers were actually starting to disengage. And they just kind of intuitively know that there's probably a big segment of their customers that are not as involved or as engaged. So they were like, well, can you do a behavioral segmentation for us? Well, the answer is yes, but what are you going to do with that? Well, we want to understand the level of engagement of our customers, and maybe we can build a churn model. Okay, that's a good idea too, but then what? If I give you the probability of every different member, what is the probability of them actually dropping out? The next question is like, well, what are the ways that I can actually engage? What are the interventions that I can actually have in order to engage these members? So we actually ended up building a system for them that was a recommendation. So the core of it was a recommendation engine, but then it was actually ensembled on top of a propensity model that gave us the probability for churn. And then we had behavioral segmentation sitting kind of at the, foundational layer to truly help us understand what are the differences in the drivers behind the probabilities and the results that we saw. Then, of course, experiment. I love the question that you ask in terms of what would happen if something goes wrong? Well, what is the definition of wrong, right? So you got to experiment. It is probabilities that are coming out of these systems and are out of these models. So it is incredibly important to then actually go to the field. There exists methodology to properly test these models. So when we did that, we ran a campaign, and we made $52 million in 3 weeks introducing term deposit products to some of the members that had a very high probability of dropping out. So that's the possibility that we are talking about. It is truly possible. If you put a few different pieces together, pieces that may seem unrelated at the very beginning, you can actually have pretty good impact. All right, let me move to a second. So our products, and I love how you were talking about, decisioning and intelligent decisioning. It really starts by understanding the scenarios and the outcome and joint ROI from those scenarios. But then, we're talking about enterprise. It needs to sit properly within the stack of an enterprise. So we have developed multiple different modules and multiple different products that can actually, they're beautifully sandwiched between the data from an enterprise, but also an interpretation layer. Like, remember, at the end of the day, the people who are taking my list with probabilities of members dropping out on products that they need, they're sitting in a call center. They're picking up the phone, and they need to talk with somebody. So you need to be able to give them few pieces of information to actually do that effectively. I am going to skip this one because I've got 30 seconds left. But interpretation is really important. And the Gen AI and all of these different technologies that we are talking about, there are tools that we can use them effectively in order to get to a proper solution. And this is my incredible team, really lucky. But it just takes, I think, the thing that I wanted to highlight here is intellectual diversity. You need to have an economist sit with a physicist, sit with a computer scientist, sit with engineers to really look at problems as holistically as we can, but also backward engineer toward end-to-end products that can sit and function properly in a context of enterprise.
Thank you so much, Rogeya. That was on point. 5 minutes.
5 minutes, did it.
René Garcia, you are Scientific Director at Schema Business School Canada, and you will give us some perspective about the research in AI and finance.
Sure. So let me say that Schema Canada is an innovation center in AI located in Montreal, but it's part of the Schema network, which for 160 years has trained management students. And today, Schema Business School is present in 5 continents with 7 campuses. So let me give you my main message right away, which in fact is consistent with many things that have been said. Data and quantitative methods have been present in finance for a long time. And they were necessary to give, for the financial institution to give advice to their customers, to manage risk, to measure risk, to do portfolio allocation for them, to grant credit to individuals and firms. And these functions have not changed. What has changed is the availability of a large set of data, not always in tables as in the past, but those data come in various forms. And as I will describe later, they are really the heart of the innovation in AI. And then you have the methodologies that become more and more complex. Of course, developers, scientists want to increase the precision of their algorithm and all that. But at the end of the day, the function has not changed. So the financial institutions have to get the trust of their customers. And to give that trust, then at the end of the day, they have to strike a balance between the complexity of the models that we used and the interpretability or the explainability of these models. And that, I'll come back to that at the end of my talk, but that is consistent with what Monsieur Bérubé was saying. So what about the data? Well, today, researchers in finance have access to a lot of high-frequency data. By high-frequency data, meaning data that record continuously the prices and other characteristics of the stocks that are exchanged on the market. We have granular data on many characteristics of the firms. I mean, like not only their capitalization values, but their liquidity, their the momentum that their prices have, et cetera, et cetera. And we have also all the textual data that comes from social networks, news releases, speeches, conference calls, all these things that come from firms or even central banks. And all this gives us a lot of data on both at the micro level, level of the firms, and on the macro level. So we have better, in a way, in all these speeches and all this text, we have a lot of information about the policies that the central banks, for example, are intending. So, and then I cite also government and central banks, but the thing is, I mean, like they provide a lot more data too than they used to, okay? And then we have the machine learning methods. Okay, so there, I mean, like you have three types of methods. You have what you call unsupervised. So basically here we have all these tons of data, and then what we want to extract is the main information present in this data. And what we do is we reduce the information to components or factors that will explain the most variability in this data. So that kind of shrinks the whole set of data to a few factors that you think are important to forecast return or to forecast risk. And then you have the most advanced supervised methods, which are deep neural networks. And there, I mean, like, we really gained a lot by going deep in analyzing the data, analyzing the non-linearities that could be present in this data, analyzing thresholds that will be present in this data. All these things are very, very important to forecast, of course, and to get more precision. Now, if we go to unsupervised, I mean, the danger is that you get these factors, but you cannot label them, right? Because, they are just summarizing the information, but you have to say, well, is that this represent the market, the volatility of the market? Well, you don't, you have to really, in the supervised methods, I mean, like you have a target, and then you have to make sure that, you are as close as possible to the target. But the thing is, they are called, I mean, those deep neural networks are called sometimes black boxes. It's very hard to see inside the box, right? And then you don't really know where it comes from. So I think that the last method I mentioned, reinforcement learning, where I did a bit of work, is better in the sense that it's more transparent. There, I mean, like it's based on an agent that who is present in an environment, and then he has to make decisions. So suppose it is a guy who wants to do a portfolio allocation, so he observes prices, he observes some macro indicators, he observes other data, and then he has to take an action. He has to determine the weights of his portfolio, and he has to see, what kind of reward, or for example, I mean, if he wants to minimize risk, or if he wants to maximize the Sharpe ratio, any objective function that he has, then he has to see, what kind of reward he gets by taking this decision. So what he does, he trains with past data and takes these actions, sees a reward, go back, and once he finds that this model works well, then he goes to the current set of the environment, I mean, like the current state of the environment, and then takes the decision and see what reward he gets. So here we have a dynamic process which works in an uncertain world, because you discover the world as you go along, and that resembles what we observe in practice. Okay? Now, to go back to measuring and forecasting risk and return, So all these methods and all these data allow us to better do these functions. And, for example, for granting credit, we have access to millions of mortgage. For example, I read a paper where, they had 12 millions of mortgage in Europe, okay? So, for that, that beats certainly what the banks used to have, which was just the data set of the mortgages that they were granting, okay? So, since I have 2 minutes left, let me go back to what I said at the beginning. Researchers and developers want to get the best models, so they invest a lot in trying to have the most precise forecast. Now, the problem is that, how do you explain what you get when you have a deep neural network to somebody who has to use these things? So, first it's interpretability, but also explainability. You have to explain in layman terms what causes this result, okay? And that's very hard, okay? And the research now is on interpretability. Some software are written, but they are written by developers, right? They're not written by end users. So there is a problem there, maybe, So we have to strike the right balance to provide, models that are performing, but which are close to what, to be able to explain them to the end user. So let me show you this book. I am a co-editor of this book with 2 colleagues from Schema and 2 other colleagues. And in this book, you'll find 10 chapters, and some of them will go into details in what I just looked at superficially today. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, René Garcia. Thank you, Roger Tabrizi. Thank you, Mara Reef. Thank you, Peter Kramerick. Thank you, Darren McMullen. And thank you, Diederik van Leer. Thank you all for listening and attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well done, Mathieu. Thank you very much. Thank you, panel.
Welcome.
Nice work.